we oftentimes don't win against directly in our overlaps.
Hmm.
And so in order for them to take you seriously, you've got to have high levels of engagement. But if I go off on a tangent, I'll do a whole thing on demonstrated interest. But the point Vince is making is like people hear those horror stories too, right? So you hear about the kid, I'm thinking of a kid that got in Harvard but not GW. And people hear about those things
Yes.
and then they're like, oh, man, I really need to cover my bases. So then they add more schools either on that probable side or on the aspirational side, either one, all to protect themselves. But and that makes sense, but it also makes sense if it's done well with good strategy. Hey, Vince.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm great, thanks, my friend, and happy to have you join a series we're doing. Friends, if you're new to our YouTube channel, we do a bunch of series. We're doing a series called Grinding My Gears, things that, tick us off that parents and students do, that colleges do. We're doing another series on the most frequently asked questions we get as college admissions professionals, as admission and college counselors. And then we're also doing one where we're looking at trends we've seen in the last few years in college admissions. Vince is here to join me and help me with this one. And today's trend we're going to talk about is students are applying to more schools. They just are. So, Vince, what do you want to say about this? Take it where you want to go, and I'll chime in with my thoughts after you say what's on your heart.
It's interesting because I think a lot of this stems for different rationale. Part of it was about providing access, and suddenly you saw this movement start after the Common Application was developed, and that was developed for many good reasons. And I don't ever think the Common App should go away. In fact, I wish everyone used the Common App.
So you and me both.
But, the Common App, they limit the number of schools that students can apply to, and they do for good reason. Now,
but it's limited to 20, which is
Right.
still way up than people used to apply back in the day, 2, 3, 4. It's not like that anymore.
Yes. And so that's where it started. Like as soon as they knew what the limit was, saw people starting to ratchet up. Now there's a number of reasons why you as parents or families, students think that they need to have 20 schools or more on the list. If you're applying to really selective places with admit rates below 20%, people feel like this is, like shooting buckshot. And if I just shoot buckshot and I'm going to hit the target one time if I shoot all this buckshot. Well, no.
That's a major reason, in my opinion, Vince. There's no question. Like the more people hear it's harder to get in, the more people say, well, my insurance plan would be add 5 more schools, That's one of the biggest reasons. That's why sometimes people will say to me, I'm sure you get this question, I've heard a lot about this demographic cliff and this, enrollment cliff, and like there's supposed to be way less applicants. So does that mean it's going to be a lot easier for me to get into? And they name some super selective school, and the answer is no, right? Because those schools, highly selective privates and moderately to highly selective flagships, publics, they're on the rise and ascendancy with applications. And part of it is this, the more people hear it's harder to get in, like it makes sense if you think about it. Because think about it, people do the same thing with job applications. Like I've heard it's really hard to get a job these days, so I better put a lot of resumes out there, that it's a natural inference for people to make.
Yeah.
But that's one of the major reasons why applications are on the rise. And then you mentioned another one, Common App. The Common App makes it very easy. There's 7 sections to the Common Application. So when people have done their profile section, their education section, their testing section, their family section, their activities section, some schools have courses and grades, some don't. And then the writing section, which is both the main personal statement and the additional information, which most people don't do. Like you're done the Common App, and more and more and more and more schools are saying, we don't need any more additional writing. We don't need any more additional writing. So, and then on top of that, more and more and more schools are dropping application fees. And one thing that might be helpful for listeners to know is there is a lot of pressure on a college to show that you have momentum. And there's that pressure that comes from the board of trustees and the president. It comes from alumni. It comes from, current parents, current students, faculty. Everybody wants to feel like they're kind of at a hot school that's going in the right direction. One of the ways people want to signal that is increased applications.
Yeah.
So there's pressure there. So one of the things schools have done is, one, make the application easier by getting rid of additional writing and also dropping the app fee. All of those, and Vince and I see this every year, where a school extend its deadline. We're great news. And they'll usually say something like, we know how busy you are out there. They always put it in student friendly terms. But meanwhile, they don't have the application numbers they want to report, for the year. So they extend the deadline. So the more you make it easier, and yeah, think of it. Back in the day, you didn't have the internet, you didn't have the Common App. It was a lot of work
It was a
to have
lot
to
of work.
turn in one application. Now it's so easy that a lot of people are like, why not? You know, I can do 5 more, and 3 of them are waiving the app fee, and 3 of them don't have any what I call custom prompts. Most people say sups or supplemental essays. You know, like why not is kind of the mindset. And so that's leading to the increase in applications. And while it's true that 70%, 73% is the average acceptance rate out there right now, the overwhelming majority of especially more upwardly mobile, affluent families, upper middle class families are aspiring to a lot of the same 75 schools.
Yeah.
That's creating, it's like you're going down on the freeway and 2 or 3 exits are closed. Well, now that one exit everybody's trying to get off, massive logjam.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
that's what's happening. So while, yeah, the acceptance rate's gone from 63 to 73 in the last decade. So you could argue colleges are getting easier to get into, but not the 50 to 75 of selective liberal arts colleges, selective flagship schools, and public schools, and selective privates that so many students are shooting for and aiming for.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting because it's a constant, pull and sort of takeaway when you're working with students and you found a gem and you're trying to help the families understand that this gem will become, like a diamond maybe in 20 years. A good example is Northeastern. Like I
Hmm.
remember I started, on the high school side, 2000, 1999. Here we go, people. Now you know. And I would say Northeastern, and those parents from the East Coast, they would look at me like I was telling them they weren't going to college. Like they,
Sure. Sure.
they were like, what? That? No. And slowly it started to shift. And you see, in 1999, 2000, 2001, I had students who went to Indiana, Bloomington with a 2.1, 2.0, 2.3, and they thrived. They did better than high school. So when you see this increase, I think there are a lot of people who are hedging their bets, but when you have a balanced list, when you have enough likelies and the student is excited about those likelies, you don't need more than 3. You don't need 12 where you're just like a guarantee. And then you're just like sort of padding. And then sometimes I know you've seen this, Mark, some of the students, they don't get into the likelies because they don't demonstrate any interest. And
Yeah, that's a whole other thing.
the more you're trying to control all this. There's a lot of schools. If, you added, this school at the end because there was no supplement. And if you didn't demonstrate any interest, bye, deny, or they think
Vince,
you're
I
too
have
strong.
multiple interviews I'm doing coming up with people on demonstrated interest. I've already done a lot. I did one with
Hmm.
Greg Zeiser from Elon on the podcast. Did one with Matt Bonser
Yeah.
from you know, Colorado College. I did another one with Chris Terra, used to be at Drew, but I got several lined up that I'm doing. And I just had the pre-meeting for one of them, Bethany Perkins from Miami University,
Hmm.
Ohio. And we're going to do one on demonstrated interest. And in the pre-meeting, she made a point that a lot of people don't understand, which is the stronger you are as a student, in a lot of ways, it's more important that you demonstrate interest because if there are a lot of schools that are looking at a high flyer and they're like, okay, this kid's going to get in a whole bunch of places that we oftentimes don't win against directly in our overlaps.
Hmm.
And so in order for them to take you seriously, you've got to have high levels of engagement. But if I go off on a tangent, I'll do a whole thing on demonstrated interest. But the point Vince is making is like people hear those horror stories too, right? So you hear about the kid, I'm thinking of a kid that got in Harvard but not GW. And people hear about those things
Yes.
and then they're like, "Oh man, I really need to cover my bases." So
Hmm.
then they add more schools either on that probable side or on the aspirational side, either one, all to protect themselves. But and that makes sense, but it also makes sense if it's done well with good strategy because if you just apply to a bunch of schools without any engagement, you're not likely to get good results. Or if you apply on the highly selective side where everything counts, and you don't really put time into every writing piece, or if there's an interview, every single component of that application, additional information, resume if there is one, interview if there is one, talking to your recommendation writers, so that they really deliver, they really advance your cause with what they say about you. They don't just give you typical stuff that colleges see. Then, you can waste a lot of time and get little results. And it can be really tough on the mental health too.
Mm-hmm.
Really take a toll on the mental health. Like, it can sound good in theory. Oh, just add 8 more selective schools. One of them will like me. But I tell you, getting eight doses of bad news all within the same week is tough on anybody's mental health,
Yeah. Yeah.
and something that, we'll talk about this in other videos, but I think people can't hear this enough. There's a basic, simple mistake that people make over and over and over again. I'm sure you see this all the time, Vince. There is an initial screening that's done right away off academic criteria for you to be competitive or non-competitive.
Yeah.
And colleges are looking at things like the rigor of your courses, your grades, your grade trends, your standardized testing, your fit to major, your competitiveness in that major, and then even their knowledge of the school you're coming from and their program. And all those things kind of comprise that initial. And that's like pass fail. That's pass fail. And I have to tell people all the time. I had to tell a student this week that the schools that you're interested in, I have not seen somebody get in with your grades and your rigor.
Mm-hmm.
And it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't not gonna matter what your recommendations are, what your extracurriculars are, unless you're like recruited athlete, and sometimes recruited athlete for a marquee revenue producing sport, not just a recruited athlete. Recruited athletes at highly selective schools in non-marquee sports still need to be very strong. And what your teachers say about you, like, that can't liberate you from a non-competitive academic profile. No admission officer ever wants a faculty member tapping them on the shoulder saying, "How did this kid get in my class? They can't do the work."
Right.
And they're not gonna take that risk.
Amen.
And so I see a lot of mistakes made at this point because people want it so badly, or they just don't understand, or they think they can compensate for a non-competitive academic profile because, well, I can write my butt off. Wait till you see my essays. I can write my butt off, or my teachers love me. And they just don't understand how it works.
Yeah.
And so that can lead to a lot of wasted applications. And that nobody expects, like, your average person, this is not what they do all the time. Like, you and I have been doing this for decades. So we don't expect them to come in and have all this knowledge, but listen to us when we're telling you, if you are way out of profile, like, your application is dead on arrival unless there is some very unique hook. Like, if your dad's going to build a $50 million building and that's all agreed upon ahead of time. Okay. But how many people fall in that category, right? Like 0.001000.1% or whatever. So that's just a mistake where I see a lot of applications, wasted applications. Like, you won't make up for it in volume if you're not even academically competitive from jump.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that, sometimes people are equating, not that students are on dating apps in high school, but this is not a dating app. You're not gonna find that person just because you put 8 out there. No, they can all say no, not interested.
I don't know how you feel, Vince, but I generally like my students to get as much good news as bad news. I just think
Yes. Yes.
I have a view of this process, which is confidence is one of the most important things that you can have in life. And I want you to come out of this process with more confidence than you went in.
Mm-hmm.
And that means I want you to have a lot of success in applying. And that means you got to have a good list. It's got to be a balanced list. You have to understand it if you're competitive for the schools you apply to. I mean, I'm thinking of one student I was working with. Things ended up working out for her at the end. But at first, she was beaten down. And this was a real high flyer, but she didn't get good news on, she got deferred from her first choice early, which she was devastated by. A couple other schools that she liked a lot. She was really feeling beaten down, even that they eventually took her and she's happy there now. But then I'm thinking of this other student I was working with who didn't even have a 3.0 GPA, but the student applied to schools for whom they were competitive.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then the student said to me, "It just feels so good getting so much love and having all these schools want you so badly."
Yeah.
And what was the difference? One applied wisely and one did it. So I think it's the quality and the match is really, really important here. But why do we feel that people are applying to so many more schools? I think from my experience, I think we've mostly nailed it. It's the ease of applying through the internet and the Common App, and schools dropping app fees, dropping essays. It's the constant talk they hear, which is true of how hard it is to get into the most selective schools because the same people are all trying to get off the same exit on the freeway and it's creating a logjam. And then people just think more is better. Now, I'll be honest, I have a very conflicted view on that because sometimes I actually have seen that work, with a really competitive kid if they apply to a bunch of schools. I've seen it work, I've seen it not work. And so it's just, is somebody up for putting in that amount of work that's involved in that? And that's just such an individual decision on an individual basis.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think if you're going to make that decision,
Mhm.
like you said, do the best you can to make sure that people think it's real. It's a real app. You can't, you just don't want to throw something in and pay no attention to them
And
or
one other thing, if you're going to do that, if you're going to be a high volume applier because it's really important to you to go to highly selective school and you want to take your chances. And I'm assuming you're someone who's like in profile, but just because you're in profile, it like 75% of kids are in profile. If these schools have low admit rates, most of the kids they're not taking are not in profile. You really need to be getting this thing done the summer of your rising senior year. You need to be banging out those applications and getting them done, because if you try taking this into the senior year where you're taking your most demanding classes and there's already all these other inherent stresses that come with being a senior, like I will argue, it's stressful. In the back of people's minds, there's the fear of, well, if I get rejected by all these schools, like that adds stress. There's also stress. Where am I going to be next year? Am I in Maryland? Am I in Michigan? Am I in California? Am I in Georgia? Am I in Maine? That adds stress, not knowing where
yes.
you're going to live.
Yeah.
The senior year, you're taking hard classes. You're hearing about other people getting in early, all this stuff. So-and-so got a scholarship. So-and-so got it. Like all these things add stress. So you're going to have that. And then you don't start executing applications until the fall. I tell students, it's just like you added 2 courses to your school load there. So if you're going to be one of these people that really it matters that much to you to go to a highly selective school, not only do I recommend that you do your work over the summer, but when I have my students like this earlier on and I see them that want to be high volume people events, I actually have them look at the last 3 years of the individual custom props, the college specific essays, especially the year before.
Mm-hmm.
And they may not write the whole thing out because it could change, but they'll at least go through research and bullet point what their answers would be so that if it is the same, they're prepared to execute it, because you don't want to be doing all this work. You're going to be surprised at how much work you're going to have to do. So those are some tips. Any other thoughts?
That's it.
Awesome. Thanks again, my friend, as always. Appreciate you. Look forward to having you back, my bud.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.